Democratic insider sharing his secrets with the New York Post about voter fraud and fixing mail-in ballots, saying, quote, "This is a real thing, and there's going to be a war coming November 3rd over this stuff. If they knew how the sausage was made, they could fix it." Maybe that's the point of this story. Joining us now, the reporter who got the interview, John Levine. John, first off, what made you convinced that this guy was for real, or this person was for real?
You know, it's just, he came to us. Well, first, Brian, thank you for having me on the show.
No
I'll say
problem.
that he came to us, and it was the level of detail he was able to offer and the story he was able to tell. And, you know, obviously we had to keep him anonymous because, you know, he would face, you know, very severe prosecution for some of the stuff he was talking about. And, you know, the evidence he presented us, and, you know, just, this is a very serious guy in New Jersey. I would not say a household name, but it's someone who, you know, you could see has a very long track record with some of the biggest politicians in that state, up and down. And, you know, once he started talking, and once it sort of came from the horse's mouth, it was both, it was revealing, but also chilling, I would say. So we see what you
right.
do.
I mean, it flawed me, and then it wasn't surprising to see the Fox and Friends Weekend do it and talked about your story. It was on Sunday's New York Post. So you talked to this anonymous source, and he says not only has he done it himself, he trains others to do it in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, as well as New York. And here's an idea of what he does. Here's an example. A Democratic operative. It's a real thing. There's going to be a blanking war come November 3rd over this stuff. And if they knew how it's done, this is how they could fix it. And one of the areas in which you delve into it, how they do it, is the envelope is much more foolproof than the ballot. The key is getting the envelope, correct?
Right. You know, what he would say is, you know, your voter is mailed the ballot, and then once the ballots go out, they just fan out and they knock on doors and they convince people to hand over completed ballots, which you might be thinking, well, that's crazy, but he laughed. He's like, well, you know, that's easier than you think. And they say, oh, hello, I'm a, you know, district leader. I'm with the county, this or that. You know, I'm here to mail your ballot. And he says a shocking number of people will just hand over completed ballots. And, you know, there's an area in the article where he says, you know, you got to make sure to sprinkle the ballots in different mailboxes, because if you put them all in one mailbox, it's too suspicious. And there was a voter fraud job that he pointed to that got busted, and he was laughing, and he's like, I would never make that mistake because they put all the ballots in one mailbox.
So they open up the envelope, right? They open up the envelope, and they'll put the new ballot in, then they close it again. They steam it open. Here's another quote from your story about employees. Says, you have a postman, for example, who's a rabid anti-Trump guy, and he's working in Bedminster for some Republican stronghold. He can take those blank ballots, knowing 95% are going to be Republican. He can just throw those in the garbage. And I guess he's done that.
Stopping it. I mean, and how would you know? And, you know, once a ballot is cast, that's it. You don't get to cast another one. And, you know, there's no mechanism to prevent that. And there's been cases in New York, which are documented in this article, where, you know, I think 500 ballots were delivered to the Board of Elections 8 months later. And it was just like, you know, they were found in a corner somewhere. And we don't know how they got there, who put them there. And those people ended up being disenfranchised.
So, you know, in New Jersey, we already know what a debacle it was in these primaries, and the New York had one too, with ballots being left on postal floors or not appearing at all. Another quote you have is from a nursing home, for example. You said, anonymous, the operative talks about rigging nursing home ballots. There are nursing homes where the nurse is actually a paid operative, and they go room by room to those old people who still want to feel like they're relevant, and they literally fill it out for them.
Yeah, you don't even need to steam anything open. You don't even need to steam it open in that case. They just, it's, you know, this has been called granny harvesting in the past, you know, and they don't even have to steam it open because the nurse is on the payroll, and then they just go and the nurse gives a stack of ballots that, you know, it's like, hello, we're going to do the ballot together, and then you know, at that, it's both fraud and it's elder abuse, frankly.
And John, what did you walk away with out of all this, the operation? When you were done with the interview, when you wrote the story, what did you walk away with?
You know, the takeaway for me, and his takeaway too, is that you don't need to, like, the answer here is not to abolish mail-in voting, but that there are some very, very easy ways to just make it a lot safer. You know, things like, you know, having a watermark or barcode, or just, he was saying how, treat a ballot with the same security you treat the money. I could never take a $20 bill and put it into a copy machine and come out with a new $20 bill that I could just go spend at the store, because that's a one-way ticket to jail. Treat a ballot like that. Put security features like that in.
Right. Make
it as secure as the money. And just
Gotcha.
voter education. Don't hand your ballot to a random person that knocks at your door saying that they can deliver it for you.
Gotcha.
Do it yourself.
Read this story, and you'll no longer say election fraud's impossible, and it's so alarming. John, good job. Thanks for bringing this forward.